Long before the first local coins were ever struck in the lands of modern Ukraine, people still needed ways to trade and measure wealth. In the ancient state of Kievan Rus, which flourished over 1,000 years ago, commerce was vibrant and essential. Merchants traveled long distances, connecting the Baltic Sea in the north with the Byzantine Empire in the south. To facilitate this trade, they relied on a system that did not involve uniform, state-issued coins. Instead, they used a combination of barter, foreign money, and special silver bars. These bars were known as hryvnias. They were not coins, but rather standardized weights of silver, often shaped like long hexagons or rhombuses. And they served as a reliable form of currency for large transactions. These silver hryvnias were the backbone of the early economy. Their value was based purely on the weight and purity of the silver they contained. This made them a trusted medium of exchange across different regions and with foreign traders. Alongside these ingots, a diverse mix of foreign coins also circulated throughout Kievan Rus. Silver dirhams from the Arab caliphates and gold solidi from the powerful Byzantine Empire were common sights in marketplaces. These coins arrived through extensive trade networks and were highly valued for their precious metal content. Ukrainian lands were a crossroads of civilizations, and the money people used reflected this global interconnectedness, with treasures from the east and the south flowing through its bustling trade routes. The word Hryvnia itself has deep historical roots, originally referring to a decorative neck ornament or torque made of precious metal. Over time, the term evolved to describe a specific weight of silver, and eventually, these silver ingots became the monetary unit of the same name. This system, while effective for its time, was decentralized. There was no single authority minting currency for the entire realm. Wealth was measured in the physical amount of silver one possessed, whether in the form of these ingots, foreign coins, or even jewelry. This early period of monetary history shows a society that was deeply integrated into international trade, but had not yet taken the step of creating its own unified coinage for everyday use. The reliance on foreign currency and silver bullion highlights the economic sophistication of Kievan Rus. It was a state built on trade, and its people were accustomed to handling money from distant lands. Archaeological discoveries have unearthed countless hoards from this era, containing mixtures of Byzantine gold, Arab silver, and the native hryvnia ingots. These finds paint a vivid picture of a prosperous and dynamic economy. This foundational period set the stage for the next major development in Ukraine's monetary story, the minting of its very own coins, a move that would forever link the name Hryvnia to the concept of a national currency and statehood. The turn of the 10th century marked a pivotal moment in the history of currency in Ukraine. Grand Prince Volodymyr the Great, a ruler celebrated for Christianizing Kievan Rus, decided to take a monumental step. He began minting the first local coins. These were not meant for everyday shopping, but were powerful symbols of his sovereignty and the growing might of his state. The gold coins were called zlatniki, meaning golden ones, and the silver coins were known as hryvniki, or silvery ones. These coins were modeled after the prestigious currency of the Byzantine Empire, the most powerful state in the region. But they carried distinctly local features that declared the independence and identity of Kievan Rus. The design of these first coins was rich with symbolism. On one side, they often featured an image of Jesus Christ, mirroring the Byzantine tradition and affirming the new Christian faith of the realm. However, the other side was purely local. It showed a portrait of the ruling prince, Volodymyr, seated on his throne. Crucially, it also included his personal emblem, the trizub, or trident. This powerful symbol, which is now the official coat of arms of modern Ukraine, was a clear statement of princely authority. By placing his own image and emblem on the currency, Volodymyr was asserting that Kievan Rus was a sovereign power, equal in stature to other great European kingdoms. These early coins were minted in very small quantities and were incredibly rare. Their primary purpose was not to facilitate daily commerce among the common people, who continued to use silver ingots and foreign coins for most transactions. Instead, the zlatniki and hryvniki were instruments of statecraft and prestige. They were likely used for diplomatic payments, as gifts to loyal nobles, or to pay elite soldiers. Possessing one of these coins was a sign of immense wealth and a direct connection to the royal court. They were a form of political propaganda, spreading the image and authority of the Grand Prince far and wide. The production of these first coins was short-lived, lasting only a few decades into the 11th century. After the reigns of Volodymyr and his immediate successors, local minting ceased for a very long time. The fragmentation of Kievan Rus into smaller principalities and the subsequent Mongol invasions in the 13th century brought an end to this early era of national coinage. However, the legacy of these first coins endured. The use of the trizub and the name Hryvnia for the medieval silver bars would be remembered centuries later, becoming foundational elements when an independent Ukraine once again sought to create its own currency and forge a modern national identity. Following the decline of Kievan Rus' and the devastating Mongol invasions of the 13th century, the dream of a unified local currency vanished for hundreds of years. The lands of Ukraine became a fractured territory, with different regions falling under the control of various foreign powers. This political division was directly reflected in the money people used. There was no single official coin. Instead, the economy operated on a complex and often confusing mix of currencies from neighboring kingdoms and empires. Marketplaces in cities like Kiev, Lviv, and Kamyanets-Podilsky were filled with the sounds of unfamiliar coins clinking together, a testament to the region's status as a contested borderland. In the western and central parts of Ukraine, which were incorporated into the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, and later the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, Polish and Lithuanian coins became dominant. People used silver coins called gross and larger silver thalers for significant purchases. The names of these coins entered the local language, becoming part of the everyday vocabulary of trade. Meanwhile, in the southern regions along the Black Sea coast, the influence of the Ottoman Empire and the Crimean Khanate was strong. Here, Turkish and Tatar coins circulated widely. This patchwork of currencies meant that merchants and ordinary people had to be skilled at evaluating different types of money, constantly calculating exchange rates based on the weight and purity of the silver or gold in each coin. The era of the Cossack hetmanate in the 17th century brought a new chapter of political autonomy, but it did not lead to the creation of a new national coinage. The Cossack state, while militarily powerful, lacked the economic infrastructure and stability to establish its own mints on a large scale. Consequently, its economy continued to run on foreign money. Dutch ducats, Polish silver coins, and Russian kopecks were all in circulation. This period of currency chaos underscored the political instability of the time. Without a single ruler strong enough to impose a unified monetary system, the land remained economically fragmented, reliant on the money of the very powers the Cossacks often fought against. This long period, stretching from the 13th to the 18th century, is often called the coinless period in Ukrainian history, not because there was no money, but because there were no locally issued coins. The economy was a monetized one, but it was dependent on external forces. The circulation of so many different types of coins from Poland, Lithuania, Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Muscovy created a complex economic environment. It was a time when a person's purse could contain a dozen different kinds of silver and gold, each telling a story of a different king, a different empire, and a different political reality that governed daily life in the divided lands of Ukraine. By the end of the 18th century, the political map of Ukraine had changed dramatically. The lands were partitioned between two powerful empires. The vast majority of central and eastern Ukraine was absorbed into the Russian Empire, while the western region of Galicia became part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. With this consolidation of power came a forced monetary unification. The chaotic mix of foreign coins was swept away and replaced by the official currencies of these two empires. For the first time in centuries, large swathes of Ukraine used a standardized, machine-struck coinage, but it was the money of foreign rulers, bearing their symbols and asserting their dominance over the land and its people. In the territories under Russian rule, the Russian ruble and its smaller denomination, the kopek, became the sole legal tender. These coins were uniform and professionally minted. Their designs were meant to project imperial power and authority. They featured the double-headed eagle, the symbol of the Russian Empire, and the monogram of the reigning Tsar or Tsarina, such as Catherine the Great or Alexander I. For Ukrainians living under Russian rule, every transaction, no matter how small, was a reminder of their place within the empire. The old names for coins, like gros, faded from common use, replaced by the Russian terms ruble and kopek. Meanwhile, in western Ukraine, under the control of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a different monetary system took hold. people there used the Austrian gulden, which was later replaced by the Austro-Hungarian krone. These coins, like their Russian counterparts, carried the emblems of imperial authority. They featured the portrait of the Habsburg emperor, such as Franz Joseph I, and the imperial coat of arms. For Ukrainians in Galicia and Bukovina, the krone was the currency of daily life. This division created a monetary border that ran right through the Ukrainian lands, further separating people who shared a common language and culture, but were now subjects of different empires. This period of imperial rule standardized the currency, but also suppressed any expression of a distinct Ukrainian identity in its coinage. The money in people's pockets was a constant symbol of foreign domination. The designs on the rubles and krones celebrated distant emperors and empires, with no reference to Ukrainian history or culture. The mints that produced these coins were located in St. Petersburg, Moscow, Vienna, or Budapest, far from the Ukrainian lands where they were used. This era solidified the use of modern standardized coins in Ukraine, but did so by erasing local monetary traditions and imposing imperial systems that would remain in place until the dramatic upheavals of the 20th century. The collapse of the Russian and Austro-Hungarian empires after World War I and the ensuing revolutions created a brief window of opportunity for Ukrainian independence. Between 1917 and 1921, several short-lived Ukrainian states emerged, each attempting to establish its own government and institutions. This included efforts to create a national currency. The Ukrainian People's Republic introduced a currency called the karbovanets, and even designed banknotes that featured Ukrainian national symbols, including the historic trizub. However, the period was marked by war, chaos, and extreme economic instability. While beautiful paper money was printed, the minting of coins proved to be an almost impossible task, and circulation remained dominated by old imperial coins and various foreign currencies. This fleeting moment of monetary independence was soon extinguished. By the early 1920s, Ukraine was forcibly incorporated into the newly formed Soviet Union as the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. With this political absorption came a complete monetary takeover. All local currency experiments were ended, and the Soviet ruble became the one and only legal tender across the entire USSR, from the Baltic Sea to the Pacific Ocean. For the next 7 decades, Ukraine would have no currency of its own. The Soviet system was one of absolute centralization, and that extended to every aspect of the economy, especially money. The coins used in Soviet Ukraine were identical to those used in Russia, Georgia, or any other Soviet republic. They were minted in Moscow and Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, and featured purely Soviet symbols. The designs included the hammer and sickle, the globe, and sheaves of wheat, all framed by the slogan "Proletarians of all countries, unite!" in Russian. The coins were simple, functional, and devoid of any national or regional character. The denominations were the same across the Union: kopecks and rubles. For generations of Ukrainians, these modest copper, nickel, and brass coins were the only money they ever knew. This long period under the Soviet ruble had a profound impact. It erased the memory of Ukraine's own monetary history for many people. The stories of the ancient Hryvnia ingots, Vladimir's golden zlatniki, and the chaotic mix of European coins were relegated to history books. Daily life was conducted with a currency that represented a powerful, centralized state that actively suppressed local identities. The coins in a person's pocket were a constant, tangible reminder that Ukraine was not a sovereign nation, but a part of a larger, ideologically driven empire. The dream of a national currency had to wait until the Soviet Union itself began to crumble at the end of the 20th century. The declaration of Ukrainian independence on August 24, 1991, was a moment of immense national joy, but it also triggered a period of severe economic turmoil. The old Soviet system had collapsed, and the new nation had to build an economy from scratch. One of the most urgent tasks was to create its own currency and break away from the crumbling Soviet ruble zone. As a temporary measure, Ukraine introduced a transitional currency called the kupono karbovanets, or coupon karbovanets. Initially, these were simply coupons distributed alongside Soviet rubles to control the purchase of goods, but they quickly became the de facto currency of the fledgling state. This transitional period, from 1992 to 1996, was incredibly difficult. The young country was grappling with the legacy of the Soviet command economy and was hit by staggering hyperinflation. The value of the karbovanets plummeted at a breathtaking rate. Prices would sometimes double in a matter of days. People found themselves carrying large bundles of banknotes just to buy basic necessities like bread and milk. The government printed banknotes in ever higher denominations, eventually reaching bills worth 1 million karbovanets. During this time, coins were almost entirely absent from circulation, as their metal value quickly surpassed their face value, making them practically worthless for transactions. Behind the scenes of this economic chaos, however, the government was carefully planning for the future. The National Bank of Ukraine was established, and work began on designing and preparing a new, permanent national currency. The name chosen for this currency was deeply symbolic: the Hryvnia. This was a deliberate act to connect modern, independent Ukraine with its glorious medieval past in Kievan Rus. The name resurrected the memory of the ancient silver ingots and Volodymyr the Great's first coins, creating a powerful link across 1,000 years of history. The smaller unit of the Hryvnia was named the kopeka, a familiar term from previous eras. Finally, after years of preparation and waiting for the economy to stabilize, the moment arrived. On September 2, 1996, Ukraine conducted a monetary reform and introduced the modern Hryvnia. Citizens were given a 2-week period to exchange their millions of karbovanets for the new currency at a rate of 100,000 karbovanets to 1 Hryvnia. For the first time in centuries, Ukrainians had a stable, state-issued national currency that was truly their own. The introduction of the Hryvnia was more than just an economic policy. It was a profound declaration of sovereignty and a final, decisive break from the Soviet past. The introduction of the Hryvnia in 1996 was accompanied by the release of a full set of new coins, marking a new era for Ukrainian currency. The initial denominations included 1, 2, 5, 10, 25, and 50 kopyok, with the 1 Hryvnia coin being added in 1997. The designs of these coins were simple yet deeply meaningful. Each coin prominently featured the Ukrainian trizub, the very same symbol of statehood used by Volodymyr the Great on the first coins of Kievan Rus a millennium earlier. This conscious choice was a powerful statement, visually linking the newly independent nation to its ancient roots and asserting its long and continuous history. The reverse side of the coins showed the denomination surrounded by a wreath of leaves and berries, symbolizing the natural wealth of the Ukrainian land. Over the years, the lineup of Ukrainian coins has evolved. Due to inflation, the smallest denomination coins, the 1, 2, and 5 kopyok, were eventually taken out of circulation because their production cost exceeded their face value. Later, the 25 kopeka coin was also withdrawn to simplify cash transactions. At the same time, the National Bank of Ukraine introduced new, higher-value coins to replace low-denomination banknotes. Coins for 1, 2, 5, and 10 hryvnias are now common in daily life. These new coins feature portraits of significant historical figures, such as Volodymyr the Great on the 1 Hryvnia coin and Yaroslav the Wise on the 2 Hryvnia coin, further cementing the connection between modern Ukraine and its celebrated past. Beyond the coins used for daily transactions, the National Bank of Ukraine has developed a rich and vibrant tradition of minting commemorative and collector coins. These special coins, made from base metals as well as silver and gold, celebrate every aspect of Ukrainian culture, history, and identity. There are coins honoring famous poets like Taras Shevchenko, significant historical events, unique flora and fauna, and architectural landmarks. Since 2014, a particularly poignant series of coins has been dedicated to the defense of Ukraine, honoring its armed forces and the resilience of its people. These coins serve as miniature monuments, telling the story of the nation and its values. Today, Ukrainian coins are much more than just a medium of exchange. They are powerful symbols of national identity, sovereignty, and pride. For a nation that spent centuries without its own currency, the ability to mint coins bearing its own symbols is a cherished right. Each hryvnia and kopeka in a person's pocket is a small but tangible piece of Ukrainian statehood. From the ancient hryvnia ingots to the modern coins featuring the trizub, the story of currency in Ukraine is the story of the nation itself. A long, often difficult, but ultimately triumphant journey toward independence and self-determination.